Short story, red video 12. No, sorry, 13. Remember last video I told you that I would check the pronunciation? So it's actually Appia, right? You can pronounce it Appia, and you can also pronounce it Appia. Appia, Appia. Keep in mind that is the capital of Samoa. Alright. I think I should have known better last video because there is a video before I said the name of this place, right? Well, but I had forgotten. So let me see. Question: why should you be careful with the word queer? Answer: because in an older context it means strange, but nowadays can be an offensive way of calling somebody who is gay, homosexual. Question: how is it possible that a piano is littered with music? Answer: because music, we're talking about the music score, right? And littered means scattered around with. Question: what can we say about Neilson? Answer: he is considered by people from the island as a queer man. Yeah, I'll transform the rest of my explanation in another question. Probably, well, we don't know, right? But probably, why did they consider him a weird man? Well, we don't have enough information yet, but he has lots and lots of books, right? So probably he keeps to himself, and then because he reads a lot, I don't know. We'll see that in the future. Let me see. Question: why wasn't the skipper doing his regular business with his ship? Answer: because they have smallpox in the cities, or at least in one of the cities he works with, and of course smallpox is extremely contagious and nothing was steering there. Let me see if I have any other questions. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. So let's continue. He took a drink of his whisky and lit a cigar. He was a taciturn man, but there was something in Neilson that made him nervous, and his nervousness made him talk. Taciturn, I think it's okay, right? It's similar to Portuguese, but let me read the definition for you. Habitually silent or quiet, inclined to talk very little. So because he was nervous, he started to talk. The Swede was looking at him with large dark eyes in which there was an expression of faint amusement. "This is a tidy little place you've got here. I've done my best with it. You must do pretty well with your trees. They look fine, with copra at the price it is now. I had a bit of a plantation with copra at the price it is now. I had a bit of a plantation myself once, in Upolu, or whatever you pronounce that name, right? It was, but I had to sell it." He looked around the room again, where all those books gave him a feeling of something incomprehensible and hostile. You can pronounce it hostile, but I guess it's more British, or you can pronounce it as hostile. So I'll pronounce it hostile. Incomprehensive and hostile. In our list there, I put a picture of two cats, facing each other, and for sure they are hostile. to one another. I guess you must find it a bit lonesome here, though, he said. I've got used to it. I've been here for 25 years. Now the captain could think of nothing more to say, and he smoked in silence. Neilson had apparently no wish to break it. Break the silence, right? He looked at his guest with a meditative. I put a picture there just for the phonetical transcript of a meditative. Meditative eye. He was a tall man, more than 6 feet high, and very stout. Remember I talked to you about stout as the dog, like strong in the sense of, fat. And 6 feet is more than 1 meter and 80 centimeters, right? So it's pretty tall. It's a pretty huge guy, this skipper, right? So he was a tall man, more than 6 feet high, and very stout. His face was red and blotchy, with a network of little purple veins on the cheeks, and his features were sunk into his fatness. Explain to me that sentence, please. How is it possible that his features were sunk into his fatness? Before I answer that, blotchy. I put a nice picture there of, I think it's the back of a person. Yes, it is the back of a person, covered with blotches, right? There is like, areas of different colors, right? Like marks, big marks, okay? And then for blotch, the noun, I put a person showing the tongue. I don't know what kind of disease is that. You can tell me, right? But there is a huge blotch in the middle of the person's tongue. So a blotch, and then I put the definition there, is a large spot or stain. And blotchy, of course, is full of those spots or stains. Okay, so my question. Sunk, of course, is the past of sink, just like a ship that, sinks to the bottom of the ocean. If I'm very fat, my eyes start getting, more and more deeper into my face because my cheeks will get bigger and bigger. I'll try not to use will get because I hope I won't get much fatter, right? But if a person gets fatter and fatter, right? The mouth and the eyes and the nose, they get kind of lost in the middle of all that fat. So that's what we have here. So let me read it again. His face was red and blotchy, with a network of little purple veins on the cheeks, and his features were sunk into its fatness. His eyes were bloodshot, like when you spend a lot of time without sleeping, so they are red, right? Bloodshot. Or, I don't know, people who wear drugs. His neck was buried in rows of fat. His neck was buried in rows of fat. But for a fringe of long curly hair, nearly white, at the back of his head, he was quite bald. Bald is a person with no hair, right? But for, keep in mind here, except for, okay? A fringe, you can have a fringe like in front, like covering your forehead, right? Like the theater festival here in Curitiba, there is the official group of plays, and then the fringe, the ones that are around it, right? That are not so important plays, or they're not part of the main group, right? So this is fringe. You could talk about the fringes of a city. You have the city and then the fringes, the part around the city. So keep in mind that he was almost completely bald, except for a fringe of long curly hair, nearly white, at the back of his head. And then he was quite bald. And that immense shiny surface of forehead, which might have given him a false look of intelligence, on the contrary, gave him one of peculiar imbecility. He wore a blue flannel shirt, open at the neck and showing his fat chest covered with a mat of reddish hair, and a very old pair of blue serge trousers. He sat in his chair in a heavy, ungainly attitude, his great belly thrust forward, and his fat legs, uncrossed. All elasticity had gone from his limbs. Remember, we pronounce it limbs, right? Never limbs, but limbs, because MB is pronounced just like a B. Just like an M in English. Neilson wondered idly what sort of man he had been in his youth. It was almost impossible to imagine that this creature of vast bulk had ever been a boy who ran about. The skipper finished his whisky and Neilson pushed the bottle towards him. Help yourself. Okay. First of all, I don't think there are many difficult words, and I will leave it to you to understand this paragraph. Okay. Second, I want you to realize that the narrator kind of changed his perspective. Up to now, we had been following the skipper, right? And then the two guys met. So remember, we are walking through the skipper's eyes, right? And then he gets there, he meets the other guy, Neilson, and suddenly, the camera kind of turns around, and now we are looking at the skipper, and we are using the eyes of Neilson. How do I know that? Because then we have this part that he started wondering if it was possible that the skipper was once a kid running around, and playing.